So, you can hear me all right? Yes? Sound is good? Sound is good? So thank you.
I waited on mine, but he's still all that.
Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Your neighbors, fellow artists, there are some words of acknowledgement before I get started. My thanks, first of all, to Lorinda Ramos of this magnificent community and management company from East Harlem who has been so constructive in bringing this project together. Gracias for your initiative in suggesting this evening event and facilitating the space. Thank you, Kim, also for her technical support earlier on. Thank you, Miguel Rivera, whose technical versatility is impressive and always helpful. Thank you, Maura Fanfan, another wonderful artist from this community, for your unfaltering friendship, generosity, and critical eye. And other of our artists who are not here yet, but thank you also for those who are taking care of the booze over there. That's very appreciated. And my lifelong friend, Jose Luis Barrio, thank you for being here. I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to a group of special people, also friends and colleagues, collectors, family members, including my son, Geronimo, a budding artist in his own right, whose generous and trusting hearts made it possible for me to fulfill this sojourn to France. Despite the 50% grant and many amenities of the DRAW International Residency, there were many costs that otherwise would have made it impossible. An artist in residence, as some of you may know, are select places for intense, concentrated creative activity, isolated from the frenetic daily exigencies of our globalized existence, so that the artist can advance in whatever he, she may be pursuing in any given stage of their artistic life. A living and studio space are provided often in beautiful, inspiring settings, sometimes in the countryside, other times in bustling cities and towns scattered throughout many countries in the world. It can be conducive to producing volumes of work, or finishing a project, or starting a project, research, contemplation, reflection, learning, meeting with other artists, sharing in conversation and experiences and ideas. So in general, residencies are like awards given to artists, since it is a privileged time and meant to enrich and further an artistic vision and path that can then be passed on in some form or another to their communities and or society at large. There are many kinds of artist residencies. Some are self-directed, others include visits by curators or other art professionals. Most have open studios or exhibitions towards the end of the cycle. The time spans can vary between 2 weeks to a year, but mostly they are between 1 to 3 months. DRAW International was a month-long residency in Cailloux, France, a small, beautiful medieval enclave in the southern area known as Midi-Pyrénées, about an hour from Toulouse. It's run by an English couple, John and Grete McNorton, and have received artists from all over the world for the last 17 years. The intention of the residency is to foster artistic research in drawing, to promote and reveal ideas within a contemporary context. 2 other women artists share the residency, one a young art graduate from Cambridge University in England, and the other an award-winning illustrator from Chile. Arriving at a new place invariably opens the senses. especially when surrounded by such an enchanting setting. It was just great to get away. The food, the wine, the exquisite tastes of French cuisine were a treat beyond measure. It also meant learning about its history, events, how its culture was forged through battles and times of peace, and the settlements that dated from the early Middle Ages, and then discovering close by areas that dated thousands of years into antiquity.
Antonia, sorry for interrupting. Is the slideshow supposed to be running?
It's perfect right now is the moment. If you could just,
I don't know if it's programmed.
on the space thing of the computer, I think there we go. Oh, dear. Wait a minute.
Do you want
There's
this
some music that's going on there that shouldn't be there. You just
music.
So, this triggers the imagination, conjuring up images of what it might have been like in 1100 when the Caylou Castle was built. Myriad country paths near our lodgings and studios, connecting some with old Roman stone paths, allowed for long walks without the presence of a car or machine or modern noises other than birds and the sounds of nature. Of course, there were lovely little homes, many renovated from old structures. It was the perfect atmosphere to plunge into a new creative venture. Then began the studio work, settling in, accommodating all my drawing materials and my beautiful Stonehenge paper. I was very excited. I came with some ideas to explore in the drawings, eager to let my hair down, so to speak. Also a project that I have worked on and off for the last 3 years involving video projections on the drawings. There was a theme of the residency: exile, migration, and foreignness, that was linked to an exhibition under the same title at the Datois Museum in nearby Toulouse. We visited the group exhibition, inaugurated at an earlier date, that covered a wide range of mediums and interpretations of the subject matter. The participating artists were not present, but to see their work was very informative. Migration and foreignness are related themes that I have worked with over a period of time, covering a variety of mediums, from performance art, video, drawing, installation, multimedia. For the residency, I was keen on furthering my work in this respect, and in particular with an ongoing project called Mexican Hamlet, part of which is exhibited here, and one of the pieces produced while at the residency. But I will return to this later to make a brief comment. My cultural background, coming from Mexico with its rich heritage, and my maternal side, on my maternal side, which with its Scots-Irish heritage, have been a constant reference for questioning and exploring identity, history, migration, memory, origin, human evolution, the constant quest of self and being, and what we are as individuals and as a collective body, as well as a preoccupation with human strife. History is an important factor since it is a reference to origins, to the beginning of things, as a way of explaining who we are. I will share these words from an artist, Anselm Kiefer. History speaks to artists. It changed the artist's thinking and is constantly reshaping it into different and unexpected images. Two influences during the month of artistic contemplation, exchange, and production have proven to be key components. The beautiful cave paintings of Peshmer with their 29,000-year antiquity, and also the reading of Korean philosopher Byung-Chul Han, who aptly identifies our modern-day crisis to our over-accelerated time, leaving us, for the most part, in an enormous void. My artwork has been affected and altered by the notion that there is a relevant connection between ancient people's innate creativity and our contemporary yearning for a sense of being. This ties in with the ongoing interest of borderlines and landscape, horizons, as metaphors of displacement, time, memory, history, and space. In my work, this is reflected not only in the drawings, but in the relation between drawing and video, the still and the moving image, as dichotomies and encounters of different time relations. Landscapes that are horizons, a boundary of space. It also implies a range of experiences or perception, something that might be attained, the limit of what is possible. It can also imply border as that space that needs to be reached. So these are ideas that are applied in various forms. In my drawings, for example, the manipulation of the paper, the tears, the pieces of paper collaged onto the surface, the thread that dangles or serves to sew two edges pulled together suggest borders of different sorts, the outer edges of things, the outer edge of a reality. The video installation is part of a project called Mexican Hamlet, informally based on the contemplation of life and death in the soliloquy, to be or not to be. It is a personal interpretation that points towards the dramatic and precarious realities of present-day human migrations. It is meant to be reflective and to open questions around the meanings and loss of identity, the psychological and geographical displacement from places of origin and human strife. It is yet a work in process. Borders, horizons, and history. The visit to the cave paintings of Peshmer, more or less in the vicinity of Keilu, was mind-boggling. Paintings striking in their beauty and refinement, but in their antiquity of 29,000 years ago, made it even more striking. The area of the caves is a gigantic labyrinth underground, pitch black. One can only imagine what it might have been like to venture into those caves with simple torches, encountering or battling animals along the way as they, men and women and children, discovered the inner spaces, marveled and terrified, but mostly in awe of the rock formations, the stalactites and stalagmites, and coming upon wall surfaces that seemed to be ideal for something. How did they come to decide that this should be the setting to represent in graphic form a painting of the most sacred, an animal, the bison, that was food and sustenance, clothing and protection against the harsh elements? To be considered for sure was that the paintings would be protected, preserved from the elements. The creative spirit was so alive then. The acute observation, the delicacy of the line, the vision. Was it a ritual, a superstition of some sort? Or was it also an act of humble gratitude in the intimate relation between man and nature? Who would have painted with such precise and learned lines? Telling are the hand stencils that appear close to these representations. An open, spread hand, boldly affirming a presence, maybe the author, a hand exactly like ours, 29,000 years ago. Interestingly, archaeologists now identify them mostly as female. Why not? My own conjecture is that they were not likely to have too much gender division at the time. A woman would certainly have been extremely strong, agile, a fast runner, able to hunt as well, hold a tool, a weapon, to fend off threats from attacking maybe the many children that were likely about. It was likely a collective effort to do those paintings. 2, 3, 4, or more torches to be able to see what they were painting. Because the space is so incredibly overwhelming. And speaking as an artist, whoever executed the paintings needed to have practiced endlessly to achieve the precise, clean lines and the perfect proportion placed on the wall. Very likely to have practiced on the outside, on rocks of all sorts, but only to see that the elements faded the images. The second factor that impacted during the residency was the reading of Korean philosopher Shuo Han, The Scent of Time, and who ably identifies the malaise of our times as that of being out of sync with nature and our sense of being due to the highly accelerated time that seems to govern all that we do. He says, automized time is a discontinuous time. There's nothing to bind events together and thus find a connection, a duration. The senses are therefore confronted with the unexpected and sudden, which in turn produces a diffuse feeling of anxiety. Automization, individualization, and the experience of discontinuity are also responsible for various forms of violence. Time rushes off, he says, even in the precipitous haste in order to compensate for an essential lack of being. In this, however, it is not successful because acceleration by itself does not produce any hold. On the contrary, it only makes the existing lack of being more pungent. In reading this philosopher, I found a link to Peshnel, going back into the depths of history, our ancestors' creativity in finding a way of expressing a vision, our origins, the origin of art, but art as the greatest invocation of life itself. Cave paintings repeated in different areas of southern France and northern Spain over periods of 10,000 years or so. They signal to the beginning of our incredible journey through time and evolution and change. I found a sense that somehow then and now, we are always trying to articulate a sense of self, of who we are. So between then and now, when art likely was associated with magical or supernatural references, and the artists were shamanic powers, the magic of tracing a line and it becoming something, a bison or a horse, a reality transported to another dimension, that of the wall. Maybe nothing new. Maybe we know that already. But there are all kinds of archaeological findings that have proven Homo sapiens to be of a far greater antiquity, that evolution has taken so much longer, and equally telling that time, 29, 30,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago, there was also some form of knowledge and understanding of life and death. I think these extremes in the arch of time, then and now, when we are so out of sync with nature, with our collectivity, with ourselves, within ourselves, that we have reached a point of almost annihilation. And as we search for ways to save the planet and all forms of light, must give pause of how we can remake ourselves. It gives rise to all kinds of questions. The ideas that anything from the past is somehow less than the future. We progress in a linear way, but maybe there are other ways. Maybe we are all connected now to those ancestors, the first inhabitants. And maybe time is circular, or is measured by the rise of the incense and the scent as it fills our nostrils, as it fills the space. Maybe part of our course needs to find appreciation in ancient peoples, or to rethink our history. How do we find our way to a wholeness? A task for art making, a task for all. Thank you. I don't know if there are any questions. So just,
So tell us a little bit about the work
that's up
that you
here.
did there,
Right.
and how this explanation of the town, and the cave paintings,
How it worked.
informed your new work.
Well, I put up one work that was done last year, and that was done here, and has already been shown here. But it's part of a kind of a sequence, and then the next piece over, the black and white with the blue, is something I started here. And again, it's the format suggests this horizontality, and it has a certain iconic reference to a couple of pre-Hispanic symbols that have been worked in. And then there's a suggestion of a pyramid shape. And there are these contrasts of light and dark, of the conch shell, which suggests cyclical time. So this was something that I started, and I wanted to continue along that vein once I got there, which was this next piece. And I started with the horizon, it's a sunset, and while I was working on that, it looks very simple, but it has many layers of charcoal to get those kind of deep blacks. So it took me a while to fill that space up. But in the meantime, we did get to the cave paintings, and I was very affected by the whole experience, and I decided to weave into an image or reference to those paintings, those original paintings. And other elements that I've worked in, the string is something that I use in different forms. Sometimes it just hangs, sometimes it sews, sometimes it unites, sometimes. So it's it can be taken as a narrative or as a conduit of some sort. It could represent, time, or even have an emotional content to it. Such is the case of this other piece. And this was directly influenced by the idea of foreignness, which can take on also many different meanings. Otherness, right? And so this is like a word that is pretty much in our present day vocabulary as we deal with so many different groups moving in and out of spaces all over the world, right? So in this particular case, one of the things that happened during the residency was to, move into something different, to work with a different kind of space. And so this for me would be moving into a different way of solving an image. So the way I've played with the collaged pieces of paper, a space that opens up in the bottom part of the drawing, they're almost like characters, it seems to me, and so one seems to be out of space, out of place, and then it ties into a reference to a landscape. So this was my way of interpreting something that was mostly just an intuitive approach. I don't know that I have any really defined explanations of all of them. And I consider them, like works in process to be developed as I assimilate these different influences. This was the last piece I did, and it's perhaps the most different from everything that I've done before, and I was very, so I picked up on a small pebble that I found in the area of the caves and brought it with me and incorporated it into this space. And it just, I find it just very telling. I think everything is said somehow in the presence of that stone. And because it does imply, to some degree, the time, could be millions of years old. Who knows? But it has and the way it occupies space in this very simple rendering. And in this case also, as I mentioned, it has to do with Hamlet's soliloquy. It's not so much about Hamlet as it is about working with this very beautiful universal reflection of an inner conflict of sorts, and of how we deal with this. And I feel that it has a universal resonance, no matter where we come from. And I thought it very telling to put it in the hands of someone who herself and others come from also a very deep ancestrality as inheritors of the original inhabitants of this American continent. Other images in this series are other fellow migrants, and who have, they're represented by their eyes, and but no voice. But the presence is there. And the idea of, here we missed a little bit, there's another kind of lighting that goes into this. I don't know what that is.
But it stopped, your slide stopped at that point. You should be going on.
How to bring out the texture in the paper, because the paper is all crinkled up and it has a very pronounced texture. There's a lot of things going on, which is, in this particular case, a bit lost because it's a bit too dark, but it's there. And this is one approach that I've worked with. And it's, you know, it's something I'm exploring. I'm not sure that I have a definition for it, other than that. It's just an encounter of the still image and the moving image as one of many possibilities of inviting us to a different kind of reflection in the way we look at things, right? Because we're accustomed to looking, oh, there it is. I want to get all of the information I need at the first glance. Well, that doesn't happen, usually. I mean, it can, but it usually doesn't. And often, certainly with contemporary art, there's so many things that feed into what we're working with, right? All different forms of information and of materials and of resources. I mean, we live in a period in which there's an enormous expansion of visual possibilities or expressive possibilities. So I'm just kind of latching on to the kind of main current and kind of messing around with this, you know, to see what happens. Mm-hmm. Aha, no more questions. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, yes, Nancy.
One more
Yes.
practical curiosity question. How long did you have to prepare once you'd received word that you were going to be in this position before you actually left for France?
You know what, I don't remember, maybe, what was it, 3 months, 4 months? Something like that.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question, I'm sorry. I
Yes.
missed a little bit of the first part. I love like all your, like the images of all your art supplies, so all your pencils lined up, you know, it's so beautiful. When you were packing, I mean, I would imagine I would go through it a million times of what am I gonna need, what am I gonna forget,
Right.
you know, and so that packing that up, did you have like a special crate or just a suitcase that you carried on the plane?
Well, I made it incredibly compact, it's just amazing, and I filled it. Now, the paper I ordered in England, of all places. Yeah, I had to, because it was too heavy. Of course, then I had to ship it back. So, there was, but anyway, it was much less expensive to order it directly there and have it delivered. And they have a very good system. You know, Europe is relatively, you know, it's much smaller and things work very nicely in general. But all of that you see on the table, I had it all in one little thing like so, packed very tightly, shoved it into my suitcase. And, you know, just had to make sure that and because they have supplies there too. They have a little kind of storage space where there were materials which I did make use of. And then once there, I had to order more materials because there was things that I needed that you know, I didn't have. So, hi, yes, Jose Luis.
How much surrealism has influenced you?
Pardon?
How much surrealism has influenced you?
Surrealism. That's a good question. I love surrealism. And I was really into it for a long time, way back. I don't feel so much now, but there could be something to it in the work. I was, of course, you know, in Mexico, living in Mexico, there's a lot of it already everywhere.
The country.
Yeah, and the people. Yeah, and things that happen, you know. But certainly Remedios Varo, Leonora Carrington, Frida Kahlo, even I would say, excuse me for saying, my father, Jesus Guerrero Galvan, who was this outstanding painter. And he, in his work, certainly brought in a very subtle way, certain surrealistic elements, oniric elements into his paintings, into his figures. So there's that, and I think it does spill over a bit into some of the pieces, definitely.
Like that white one, mostly with the two black, how would you brand yourself? Is that
Oh.
impressionism? Well, I mean, excuse my ignorance.
Oh, I don't know. Abstract? Abstract, maybe?
Oh, it's beautiful.
I don't know what it is, really. I hadn't even thought of it.
Well, I don't want to, have it in the box.
But, I think we kind of move in and out of that anyway. I mean, some artists are very definitely something, like figurative, or minimalists, or abstract, or so on. And I'm drawn to all of this. I love it. There are many abstract painters that I love, and figurative art as well. So what I have kind of left to put aside has been the figure, the human figure, but I brought it in again in this particular piece, which you can't see, of course, because of the lighting, but it's there for the first time in a long years. I brought in a human figure.
Is that the human figure over there?
Where?
In the middle, all over the end, there's like...
Oh, right, there's an angel.
Is that...
That's an angel. Yeah, there's a
human-
figure. There you go.
Okay.
So I can contradict myself. Yeah, there's an angel.
This is the side of the...
In the middle panel, there's an
middle
angel.
The darker one,
Yeah.
like Picasso, a human figure.
Frank.
Good job.
I did kind of, yeah. Not well, today I did this. I took a lot of notes, especially of what I was reading. That kind of a journal, and I tried to do a blog, but I couldn't keep up with it. There was just too much. My coffee in the morning with a croissant took up like an hour. And that was like super important, because otherwise I don't function. But then, and reading. And so I read in the morning when my mind is more or less alert. And so I did a lot of note-taking and writing and things like that. So and that was very, very valuable for me. The rest was, like in the studio. And the studio work is not, you go in and wham, you throw the paint on the canvas. No, I would sit there for ages just looking. And that's part of, that's at least the way that I work, and others, and I know others work as well. Sometimes you sit in front of a space for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and just trying to figure out where and how and this, that, and the other. So it's not an automatic kind of process, and I'm sure that's true of many other art processes or creative processes. In coming up with, what it is you're trying to say, where is it coming from? What happens if I put this? What happens if I put that? How does it alter? How does it affect? And so on and so forth. So that kind of thing takes me like a long time. I'm a slow producer. Thank you.
Thank you.
What a great opportunity. Thank you, Rolita.
Thank you. It was, the way you described everything was so poetic. It was, I really enjoyed hearing it.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Fantástico, gracias, Ben.